Welcome to episode 7 of Disruption and Kindness. My name is Travis Swearengen, and I'm sitting here with my partner, Caleb Monroe.
Hi.
And we're here to talk about brands, businesses, and how they impact culture. Hey, man.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good, man. How about you?
Doing good. Getting a lot more sleep this go.
Hey, that's really improvement.
Yeah, huge improvement, man. Yeah, we got out of the hospital on Sunday, so it's just been good to get some real sleep and get back in the office and try and get caught up. So
Not missing that hospital smell?
No.
Nothing like it.
Not missing the hospital cot either, man.
The hospital internet?
Dude, it had these wheels on it, and so every time I'd roll over or move, the whole bed would shift, and so I would move and I'd run into their bed, or I'd run into the wall, or I'd hit the nightstand.
No good.
You just had to laugh about it. There was just no other way to deal.
Nah, just build a fort around the wheels to prevent it from moving.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But yeah, so we've been home and getting sleep, and so I've just been trying to catch up here and all that good stuff. So,
well, we have a more rested version of Travis this week.
Much more rested version. The blooper reel from last week is absurd. One day we're going to release some bloopers, and tired Travis just doesn't care about nothing.
I feel you.
So funny, man. So funny. But yeah, I don't know. I really kind of been thinking a lot about how fear takes root for so many business owners.
All right.
That's something that I've been really pondering a whole lot lately. I think we've got clients that are scared. We've got I have friends and colleagues who are in business that are scared right now, and it's just such an interesting. It is such an interesting thing. So I try to get down to the root of it with some of my friends. What are you actually afraid of?
Yeah.
You know. And for some of them, it's I'm terrified of upsetting my customer base and shaking up their normal for the sake of change and scaling. Or some of it is I'm just super terrified of making the wrong move, and so I'm not going to do anything because I'm really afraid of what my dad thinks, or my wife thinks, or her family thinks. And I don't know. I've seen and I've interacted with probably 2 or 3 business owners in the past 3 weeks that are just in this really scary place right now. And I think a lot of it's brought on by COVID. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of it is stuff that business owners deal with all the time anyways, pandemic or not.
Yeah, I think when you're leading a business, when you're the one that's steering the ship, if you will, there's a lot of pressure on you to make the right decision. Everybody wants an outcome. I think every single business owner is driving towards an outcome, a destination, and yet they're presented constantly with questions and ways they can change their product or their service or do a marketing effort. And there's constant fear about how that's going to be perceived and how that will affect their business, and can I go back? And a lot of times they end up not choosing and just sitting with that anxiety and sitting with that fear instead of just choosing a direction and going forward with it. Because the reality is you don't know the outcome.
Sure.
A lot of times every single business owner is making educated guesses.
Right.
Based on my previous experience, based on what I know right now, more information that I can gather, all of it is an educated guess until you get solid data, and then you can adapt and then you can adjust. But if you're just waiting and sitting and not making a decision, it's not benefiting you. It's not benefiting anyone. It's much better to go one of the routes, and then if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't work out, then adapt. Quickly change and pivot instead of just kind of sitting in fear and anxiety and waiting for something to change, because it won't.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think fear of failure is just so prevalent, but I don't know if people are actually afraid of being wrong as much as they're afraid of falling on their face in front of somebody else.
Sure.
There is somebody in that person's life that they're terrified of faltering in front of. And I think that as business owners and as leaders, we're going to grow and learn and adapt and get better through failure. And so the only way to really be able to reap the rewards and the benefits of failing is to be completely content failing in front of others.
Yeah.
What are ways that you've been able to like conquer fear in business for yourself?
Yeah, I think removing the sting of failing is really important concept. I don't think failure is a problem. It's when I don't learn from failure or I just give up and I refuse to grow from that experience that is the real loss. And I think we just need to change what we've been taught in school and what we've been taught from parents and coaches and other people, that when I make a mistake, if I'm playing t-ball and I hit the ball or I get struck out, like it's a failure and it's viewed negatively, and my brain trains me to not want to re-experience that feeling publicly again. And so I do everything in my power to not fail. And I think that's not true. It shouldn't be accurate. I want to, as a parent even, I encourage my kids to fail. I ask them, what did they try and do today that was something new? Because I think that if you're just trying to be failure averse, you're not growing. You're not attempting new things. You're not taking risks. You're not giving yourself an opportunity to discover new hobbies, new interests, new likes if you're just trying to avoid failure. It's a really sad life experience, I think. And so instead, I want to put weight and emphasis on that as a desirable trait, that you attempted something, that you have courage to actually apply yourself, and that you're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of quitting. Like, I think that just needs to change, right? Where I'm not afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of losing hope or vision and not picking myself back up and trying again. Even if it's pivoting away from a business completely, like, I'm not saying stick in a business the entire rest of your life. Like, when I'm saying, like, don't quit, there's an internal drive and an internal mechanic that it shouldn't be focused on failure. So as far as like how I cope with failure, I'm okay with failure. I'm good friends with failure. I learn more through failure. Failure to me is this like rich treasure trove. It's like drinking black coffee or dark chocolate. When you're eating it, there's a bitterness, and you can learn to actually appreciate the bitterness of failure and have a good friendship and relationship with failure, because you grow so much more through that when you can learn and actually study your mistakes and what ended up happening to bring that outcome about, instead of not wanting to look at it, being afraid of being publicly embarrassed, and then losing out on any growth point that could have happened from that.
It's true. I think when people are far more concerned about being publicly embarrassed in front of, other people, or in front of like a mentor or a loved one or a spouse, I think a lot of times they're actually not completely sold themselves on why they work and why they do things. Something that I have really adopted is using something called a vision board. And basically what I do is I put photos of the people I care about, or like things that I'm wanting to achieve, or material possessions, or whatever it is whatever kind of life that I'm trying to build for myself. And I try and look at that every single day in order to motivate myself. Or I really start thinking about like, who am I wanting to provide for? Who am I wanting to make a life for? And once I get completely bought in to that reality, once I get really bought into the why of why I do things, I would walk into a burning building to accomplish what I got to do. So it's just one of those things, like, are you sold yourself on why you do what you do?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good segue. Honestly, when we start these podcasts, we usually like to just talk about, hey, this is what we're wrestling with personally. This is what's going on authentically in our lives. And for me, what I was going to bring to the table is that having consistent vision is something that I think every business owner struggles with. It's something that I'm going through just this week, sitting down and thinking through, where am I? Where are we going? What's happening? Why do I do what I do? The vision board that you're talking about. And I think that it's normal to encounter these moments where you've been consistently applying yourself inside of the business and the model. And for me, I find so much joy in tackling new problems. And so the hardest thing for me is to dig in on a single topic, a single issue, a single business model, and find joy in a consistent way. That's something that I have to learn discipline in, to keep re-signing back up for the same thing, to continue to dig deeper with Monsoon, with the projects that I'm currently working on, instead of the internal itch and drive that I have is to go find something new to build. And so there's a lot of joy that I find in wrapping my head around a new problem, a new topic. That's why I like new clients and working with new things. But for me, getting up in the morning, finding that consistency as a business owner and that vision that you're talking about is really important. And it's what I'm currently applying inside of my life, is getting a refreshed vision, a renewed sense.
Right.
I'm several laps on this race called Monsoon.
Sure.
And it's just taking a breather and finding that strength to just keep running, and why, So have you personally hit those points in your life where you're needing to focus vision and remind yourself why you do what you do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I try and take time to evaluate why I do what I do, maybe like twice a year, and I really try to focus on those things.
Sure.
Like when I'm like reestablishing new goals that I'm going to be revisiting every day, or whatever else, I revisit those things on like a macro level, like about twice a year, or sometimes quarterly, depending on what it is. An example, 3 years ago, my biggest focus and what I wanted to accomplish was retiring my dad.
Sure.
My dad, he worked his tail off to provide for me and my sister and my mother, and really showed me what work ethic was, and what a husband and a father's role is in the family is to get after it and to provide, And so that's something that's very, very important for me. And so I really wanted to reciprocate to him and to retire him, because he always told me he's gonna die at his desk, or he was gonna die in his office or whatever, because he wanted to work until he died. And I just wanted to give him the opportunity to rest. And so that was something that I thought about all the time, and that was one of the things that got me through 2017, 18, and 19. And then when he passed away, I was sitting there this year going like, I don't have a reason to work. And that was super crazy, right? So I went from being hyper disciplined, getting up super early in the mornings, hitting my marketing education. I used to study marketing or business tactics like 2 hours a day, every single day. Like I was just really regimented because I knew why I was doing what I was doing. And then my dad dies, and I'm like, I've got nothing. Like what am I working for? What is this for? Because I don't care about me. I want to do something for somebody else. And so now that I'm engaged and working towards getting married here in the next few months, like my why's completely changed. Like now I'm not thinking about why I need to retire my dad. Now I'm thinking about, I'm about to have a wife who's in her last year of grad school that I need to provide for, or I'm marrying into a completely different family full of people that I want to be able to care for and help if I need to.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I definitely I've taken a step back recently and have definitely reevaluated my vision.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm at right now too. I think I'm looking at it, not that I'm not committed to Monsoon, or that I'm not aware that I have 5 kids and a wife that require me to hustle and to get after it, to provide for them. It's not about that at all. I think that you just hit a point when it's time to poke your head up out of the trenches and just sit down for a second and say, where is this going? What are we doing? And how can I get remotivated? And I think that I'm just like finding internally that there are things that just need to be sorted just a little bit. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
I think it's a normal thing. And I think most business people don't want to talk about that because it feels like, oh, are you not committed, or are you not?
You tell me this is the first time I'm hearing you say this, and this isn't freaking me out at all.
Yeah.
It's a normal thing.
It is normal, and I guess I'm running to remove this stigma as business owners that you can be committed to your business, you can be committed to your wife and to your kids and to the things that are happening in your life, and you're still going to hit these points where you need a refreshed answer to why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And I think that's just very normal to walk through that. And I think that taking time and being realistic and saying, not just saying, oh, this will pass, but slowing down enough for you to actually wrap your head around it and do some soul searching and figure out that why again, creating that vision board like you're talking about, taping it to the steering wheel of your car and putting it in front of you. It's like without a vision, people perish. And I think that's just the reality, right? When I don't know where I'm looking anymore, when I don't have a guide in front of me or a mark that I'm running towards, it's very hard for me to know that I'm running in the right direction.
Right.
So instead of just spending energy trying to figure that out, taking some time, slowing down, getting reacquainted to true north, whatever that is for you directionally, and then beginning to run is just like, it's a very necessary part of running a long-term business.
Well, and it doesn't get prioritized. Mm-hmm. And that's what's asinine to me is like, set up a meeting with yourself to sit down and go through these things. Sure. Because that's going to affect all of your work. Everything you do, everything you touch is going to be affected by your mindset. Like the vast majority of business, the vast majority of building anything is going to be your mindset.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be like 85% mindset, 15% mechanics. I mean, it's just, can you get after it? Can you push through the hard times? Like, are you motivated in getting after it? So yeah, I just think it's super important just to schedule meetings and times with yourself, get alone and just go, why am I doing this? And I think the frequency that I'm like scheduling my meetings with myself is getting more and more frequent, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, man, I'm telling you, I've got like, what I do is every 6 months, I create a new vision board. I go to Office Max. I get them laminated so they're indestructible. Yeah. And I've got I got one in my truck, in my seat. I've got one in my shower. That's why they're laminated so they can't get wet. I used to not laminate them and they'd get like all inky and runny. Sure. It was a rookie mistake. But so I just place them like where I know I'm going to be. You know, I keep one in my backpack, you know. I had a moment where I've been taking a lot of new marketing courses and they just get dry sometimes. And I'm sitting there going like, why am I doing this? I'm getting really burnt out. And I'll pull out my vision board or I'll pull out my notebook where I write my goals down every day. And I'm reminding myself like, what am I trying to accomplish? What is this for? Sure. And then I can kind of push back through. So I don't know. It's just super crucial to make time with yourself to get your mindset right.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, my point is like getting over the stigma of it, right?
Yeah.
Encountering these things and feeling like, oh man, I shouldn't be dealing with this. I need to be constantly 100% on board, bought in, having vision. And that's just not realistic and it's not true. And taking that time to be like, hey, I'm not full of vision right now. I need to go get it.
It's not realistic if you don't maintain it. If you don't take the time to maintain it. I think that you can always have it if you're actually making the time, if you're actually prioritizing like pulling yourself back onto the path. Sure. And getting going, like, because we're like, if you don't take that time, we're always going to veer off the path at some point. Like there is nothing wrong with being unmotivated if you're committed to doing something about it. If you're trying to
just don't stay there.
Yeah. Don't stay there. Sure. Like I'm totally cool removing the stigma of like, you know, it's okay to not be in hustle mode 24/7, but man, you need to get back into hustle mode.
Definitely.
You definitely got to get back there. But like, you know, how can we come alongside business owners that feel defeated, that feel scared, and that really question if the work of their hands over the past several years has been for nothing, and how do we fire them up and get them going again, you know?
It's a big question.
That's what I ask myself a lot because I've been there and those are the people I want to help. You know, those are the people I really, really care for. So I don't know. It's a big question for sure.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate, you know, being inside of a culture in a workspace where we can actually just talk about this kind of stuff. Because I think catching vision is important. It's not a long-term problem. It's a very short-term thing, but it's something I became aware of and want to just throw it out there to other business owners because I know people that have been there. And like you said, I think a lot of times it comes from defeat, personal failures, and people just looking at it where they pick on, you know, a failure point and it becomes an identity piece for them instead of it just being an outlier. Instead of it being something that happened, it failed, not I'm a failure. It's not everything that I touch turns into failure. And I think a lot of people get stuck there, that they were the cause of it. And even if they were, even if it was your decision that caused a failure to happen, you are not a failure. And picking yourself back up and realizing what caused that failure and how can I prep against that in the future to get back in the saddle and keep riding again, instead of, putting yourself into a penalty box and just saying that you're not going to try anymore.
Sure. And that's one of the reasons I really love this podcast, is because I know we've touched on it a few times, but like, we don't discuss any of these topics before we get on the mic. So like, this is our first time discussing this. This is super cool. I love that people get a chance to kind of see into our personal conversations and into, what we discuss, in order to keep Monsoon going and healthy and everything. But yeah, I just want to affirm you, dude. Yeah. Like, I think you get after it. I think you work super hard. Like, I know that, it can feel at times, man, like you don't know why you're doing things, or it's like, or things can get mundane because we just kind of get into this process of doing stuff. But dude, like, we're working towards big things, man.
Yeah.
And you're an integral part of the whole process.
Sure.
So you're doing good, bro.
I appreciate it. I do appreciate it.
For sure.
What's been really cool is we've gotten a bunch of random questions on Facebook.
So many random
questions. We have one that we've picked out.
Random. We like to ask for questions about branding and business or whatever people want us to discuss in the podcast. And we get everything from, we asked, is the earth really flat? Or my favorite one is bees. Why won't beekeepers come get my Africanized killer bees in the backyard? Why are they so aggressive? I don't know, Cody.
Appreciate that, Cody.
I do appreciate the question, but I don't know is the answer to that question.
Yeah, first figure out if they're European or African bees, and then call an expert. Could
they be wasps? Do we know?
You may still have a bee problem because you're asking for help on Facebook.
Also true. So I don't know the answer to that. Maybe call some pest control companies or
Yeah, exactly. A little bit outside my expertise.
For sure. But you got a really good one on your post. They kind of branched off into a couple questions. You want to read that?
Yeah. My friend Paige, graphic designer that I know really well, ended up asking us, she said, for our bigger, more established clients, we have newly hired marketing managers who have all of these great ideas for campaigns. And then we often have to reel them back in and snuff out their passion and creativity because of the established brand for the company that they're working on. It doesn't feel good. So how do you move forward and still create a direction that's consistent and continuous for what's been normal for that company? And so we took all of that and we kind of packaged it into a small question that we could kind of wrap ourselves around is, how do you stay on brand while being innovative in marketing and design, to not snuff out that creativity and passion that people have for different ways they can market the company or design for that company, but still maintain, focus on that brand?
Right. How do you stay on brand while being innovative in marketing, design, etc.? So your problem, or her problem, or something that she's seen happen, is that they have this established brand and they bring these new marketing managers in and they've got all kinds of different ideas.
Yeah.
They're probably doing the research on new platforms, new tactics. They're seeing something funny on TikTok they can try, all these different things that they want to do to try and reach their target demographic, and they keep having to snuff them out. And oftentimes I feel like when I see this problem happen, and I'm not saying this has been what's going on in Paige's context, but a lot of times brands don't have an established style guide. And I think it is just super important. And basically what a style guide is it's a guide that has your exact colors, the ways you can and can't use logos for your brand, what fonts are being used, what is your brand voice? So like if your brand was personified, what would they sound like?
Sure.
Is it a 35-year-old gruff man, or is it a,
Yeah. Is it a 6-year-old, kind, very academic lady?
Right. Their style guides will also talk about like grammar choices, or how do we write and spell out certain words or jargon or
the tone.
What acronyms do we use for things across the board? And most brands, they might have a really great logo or a color scheme or a nice website, but they don't have that documentation that is being used company-wide to establish this is our brand. We are all on the same team of this brand, and we are all responsible for maintaining this brand.
Yeah.
And so what can often happen is some guys will come in and they're not as acquainted with the brand, or they don't understand the brand.
They're really excited.
They haven't read documentation on how everything is supposed to be.
Sure.
Excited. They have all these ideas, and all their ideas seem like they're super off brand because they might not know what's on brand to begin with. Whereas they could let's pretend that you have a marketing manager that's coming into your department and they're really wanting to dive into TikTok because that's what's huge right now. But your brand has never really done something like that. They might be trying to use fonts and colors and like a brand voice or a vibe to the business that completely goes against what your company has done over the last 20 years. And that's going to come off as off-brand and not good. And so then you have to snuff out their creative fire or whatever else. But the problem wasn't TikTok. The problem was that they did not know how to jump onto this platform within the parameters of the brand that you've set because you have not taken the time to document this thing.
Right.
So they could have gotten on TikTok with their style guide, knowing the vibe of the content they could put out, the voice of the company, the colors, the fonts, everything, and it could have actually been on brand.
Sure.
You know, if you can do a TV commercial, you can for sure get on TikTok and make content. So
when I see this kind of question being asked, when you're having to reel them back in and snuff out passion and creativity because of branding, what immediately reaches out is exactly what you're talking about, that the steps are out of order to me. The first step as a designer, where Paige is probably sitting for their company, is to go discern the brand of the company that they're working with. And that will flesh itself out into logo, fonts, colors, like you're saying. But it goes even further. I've seen brand guidelines that don't actually include the tone or the culture, the personality, like who that person actually is personified, the company personified as a person. How do they talk? How smart are they? Do they have a college degree? All of these things need to be a part of that brand guideline. And it needs to be something that the design team or those account managers are pulling from that company and documenting really well. The marketing person shouldn't be running away with ideas without first carrying this culture and understanding and digesting exactly who this company is that I'm working for, and then they go ideate. What it seems like is that you've said, okay, this is the company, and you're more describing their products or their services or maybe demographics or past campaigns, and you've missed out on describing culture. Because if you're having to snuff out passion and reel someone back in, they've missed out on a key moment of who this company actually is and how they carry themselves. And I think if they have those components of brand, which are really, really, I think more crucial than a font, more crucial than colors, who is this company and how do they carry themselves, is going to carry out. Like, that's really, really important for a marketing manager to know. And I think that you would have to do less reeling in and less stomping on creativity if you were taking the time to actually bring them into, this is who they are. And these are the important pieces of their personality as a company, because then you get solid campaigns and then their ideas are formed by that culture that you've documented well.
Sure. When I got my start in design, I actually landed a job as the graphic designer for one of the largest real estate firms in West Texas. And I had to almost teach myself the job, and I had to really get an idea of like what fonts were being used, what was happening, what's the vibe, what am I allowed to kind of make, because I wanted to create things that were consistent. They were a super established company since the 80s, and I didn't want to just like go completely off script, but they had nothing in place. And so what I had to do was I had to go through old design files dating years and years and years back just to kind of get an idea of like what fonts are being used, what colors are being used, what's okay and what's not. And when I'd go out to try and like do something new or fresh, they would come and tell me like, oh, this isn't really our vibe, or this isn't really how we say this or do this. And I kind of ran into that myself, because I was trying to educate myself on design files over the years. And what I found out is there were so many different graphic designers
Right.
that all had different visions that created all these different things. And none of us had a style guide to work off of. And so we were just kind of working off of each other's work, and they had nothing consistent over years and years and years. And it actually caused problems when we needed to like create social media content or anything else. And so I think that happens to a lot of designers. They have to look back at the work of their predecessors and try to like piece it together when it's just so critical for your company. Like if you're going to spend the money to create a really nice brand for yourself, to hire a design firm, to get a great logo and a website and everything, I think it's just so foolish to not take the extra step and make sure everything is documented and that everything is down, and then to make sure that everyone is bought into the style guide.
Yeah. If you're going to innovate, you're talking about staying on brand while innovating. I think that innovation has to be born from understanding that culture.
Yep.
Like you shouldn't be innovating outside of steeping yourself in who that brand is, how have they carried themselves, and what are they authentically carrying. You have to emulate that onto different mediums in campaigns with copy, with colors, with photos, with tone. You emulate all of that in an innovative way by understanding it yourself. And I like to say all the time, if I'm telling our clients this all the time, if I can't communicate your brand better than you, then why are you hiring me? And I think that I need to take the time to actually understand who they are, to where I can sit down and say, this is who you are, and this is what you care about, and these are how you take care of people, and this is how you present yourself. And they go, yeah, how did you know? Like we have to be in the business of discovering companies and actually revealing who they are. That's really what we're about with graphic design, with marketing.
Sure.
I'm taking the time to say, this is who you are. And they go, this is me. And we go, okay, now we get to show that through different mediums and stuff. So don't innovate outside of actually carrying that culture. So whether it's efficiency, whether they're just the steps are out of order, like that should tell you that if marketing managers are running away and you're having to reel them back in, there's something wrong with the process of how you guys are coming to those conclusions and how brand is informing marketing. Because it should be doing a much better job. If your marketing manager is just firing themselves out like an arrow and you're like, wow, that was really off target, like actually taking the time to inform where that direction is for the marketing people to fire, like you just need a little bit more time
Right.
before release.
For sure. So I think that even the most established brands can innovate as much as they want to, as long as they set like the correct parameters for the people first.
Yeah. And the second question that she had, she said, for newer small businesses, I found sometimes I have to be careful that we don't head in too many directions. How early can you establish a look and feel for a company? How can we position these new businesses to have a flexible brand that can shape and change over time without looking and feeling too different and disconnected? And so we kind of pulled that down into that paragraph down to a single question is, for new companies, how do you create a brand that's flexible and adaptive without losing your identity?
Flexible and adaptive without
future-proofing your brand.
Right. I think that it's probably smart to start with like a really timeless design. I know we've talked about trendiness in the past, but maybe avoiding something that's super trendy, but establishing solid brand guidelines. And I just think you have to really establish your identity and document it. It kind of feeds back in that first question for me.
Yeah.
Like, who are you? And is everyone on the same page about who you are?
Right. If you're taking the time to actually sit down and fully document out, this is who we are, you can be flexible and adaptive and true to your brand without losing the identity. And I think that a lot of times what new businesses go through when they're talking about being flexible, a lot of times it has to do with them dropping products or services or adding products and services as they've gotten more data.
Right.
You know, maybe I'm selling my cheeseburgers for $5 and I start selling cheeseburgers and everybody comes into my shop and they're like, man, I'd pay $12 for this cheeseburger. It's delicious. And you're like, man, I can be selling these for more. Will, like normally what businesses will adapt over time is their products or services unless their personality. The personality shifts that I've seen or growth points, that's usually more like every 5 to 7 years that a company can kind of look at where are we going? Do we like this? And are we appealing to certain people? And do we need to change what we're authentically carrying? That's like more slow, I would say. And even then, usually it's very minute. You know, we were looking at Pepsi logos today, and the changes that they've made over the past 140 years, like, look very dramatic, but the changes they make every decade, every 20 years or so, they're very small. They're very small. They're very small. And I think that they have something that's true and authentic. They have a history that they don't want to affect or touch. But you're not, like, with your brand, if you have sat down and figured out with them who they are, that honestly should work forever with minor adjustments that are happening. And granted, products and services are going to change. They may start offering more commercial goods, more residential goods, maybe B2B, B2C, but, like, that doesn't necessarily impact the brand. You will find that flavor and that personality, whatever they're authentically carrying, should stay the same.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I hope that answers the question. I completely get it. With new businesses, sometimes there's going to be changes. Sometimes you want to still flesh stuff out, what's working, what's not. Sometimes you need to release a brand out into the wild, a logo, and then they're going to come back to you and communicate, hey, we really need something in a different medium, a different format. This isn't working. We need a square logo. We need other things. And that'll be stuff over time. But if you really understand the brand, those conclusions kind of make themselves after you've discovered it.
Don't be afraid to personify your brand. I think that I can always authentically be myself, but I'm adaptive and flexible. You're adaptive and flexible. People are in general pretty adaptive and flexible, but they're able to stay true to who they are. Your business is the same way, and it's just a matter of, just with businesses, you have to document it, because since businesses are a conglomerate of people, you know, a bunch of different personalities, you kind of have to, everyone has to get on the same page, just for a company. But I don't know. I think it's totally possible to do just that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Paige, I really appreciate your question. If anybody has any other questions, we would love to keep receiving more of these.
Yeah, that was a fun one for sure. But I know that we came across a super, just incredible marketing campaign the other day. Kraft, the food company, the famous creators of Kraft mac and cheese,
the blue box
that everyone knows and loves, decided to go a little off script with their latest campaign. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Kraft Macaroni and Cheese created a campaign called Send Noods.
Noods.
So
Noods.
Exactly. We need to spell this.
Short for noodles.
Exactly. It was National Noodle Day a couple days back. And so Kraft Macaroni and Cheese, the family company, came out with a marketing campaign called Send Noods.
Right.
And the hashtag Send Noods campaign was born. They created a commercial for it. You could go onto a website called enjoynoods.com. Again, that's spelled Noods.
Yep.
And you could actually fill out information, and Send Noods was about sending a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese to someone who could use a little comfort.
Yep.
But they also came out with a commercial, which we're going to play.
Yeah, we're going to play it right now. It'll be on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, but those of you listening on the podcast, on the audio version, you'll be able to understand what's going on, no problem. So.
Enjoy.
In these strange times, people are in need of extra comfort. That's why it's always a nice gesture to send nudes.
Send nudes.
So they know you're thinking of them. Nudes, I mean, not nudes. To be clear, I'm not advocating you send nudes to anyone. I'm talking about nudes, not nudes. I want there to be no confusion. Do not send nudes. Definitely send nudes. Send nudes early and often to everyone. Send nudes never. I mean, maybe to yourself, but even then, sparingly, unless you're talking about nudes, in which case, send away. In the event that there's any confusion about this, let's take a step back. Always send nudes. Never nudes. The only thing you should never not send is nudes.
We get it.
Do we?
And they're showing this bowl of Kraft mac and cheese with like a blur over it.
Yeah, the bowl of noodles is blurred. So what do we make of the family-friendly Kraft macaroni and cheese brand deciding to do a little tongue-in-cheek nod towards sexting?
Well, what's really funny is right before we started recording the show, one of the questions that trickled in was from my friend Bryson Riley. He goes, "Do all brands had the same capacity for provocative ad campaigns, thinking specifically the latest Kraft mac and cheese send nudes campaign. So, very timely question. Nailed it. But man, I think they handled this one super well. I think that, yeah, like you have the aspect of getting it confused with people sending naked photos of themselves. Like that's a provocative idea, but they did it in such a obviously funny, tongue-in-cheek way. And they didn't do anything provocative in the imagery or in the video at all. It's,
right.
They always had a super bold like text like send nudes NOODS, and they always had the Kraft mac and cheese bowl paired with the saying. So I mean, it's really hard to like miss their intent here.
Yeah. What I think, do all brands have the capacity to be provocative? No.
No,
they don't.
No, definitely not.
Does Kraft macaroni and cheese? Let's talk about their demographic. Who is buying Kraft macaroni and cheese? Lots of parents of small kids. It's very easy to make. It's the blue box. They grew up with it. They love it. Lots of college students. It's a very inexpensive meal. You just chuck it in there and make yourself some mac and cheese. I think that when you're talking about this 35 and under demographic who's primarily purchasing their noodles, I think that you have a demographic that winky face, understands sexting, has kind of grown up with that, was the first generation to really encounter this phenomena of taking a picture with a phone and sending it to someone else. So like, I think they get it. It's amusing to them, and it's inside of their humor sphere where it's not appalling. I think if the majority of, if you're talking about like a ginger ale brand or like a specific perfume or car company that is geared towards an older demographic doing the same kind of provocative joke or even taking it further, I don't think that you would have that.
Right.
That same, this is hilarious. This has been tastefully done, like reaction that we're having to where, I mean, they're not being weird about it.
They definitely thought through who their audience was. And again, they made it super, super obvious what they meant.
Right.
Like it's painfully obvious what they're talking about here. So for me, I think they nailed it. And it goes back to, again, what we're talking about with style guides and really understanding who you are. Kraft nailed this because they know what the Kraft mac and cheese brand is. For people, and they're able to be innovative and kind of go off the script a little bit because they're already anchored in something else.
Exactly.
So,
short answer, no, not every brand can be provocative.
No.
I think there are brands that try and be provocative. Even if you think about early, like GoDaddy, like when GoDaddy first started, like they went hard in the sex appeal. Like it was all busty women talking about buying domains and getting hosting when they first launched. It's completely not that at all anymore. I think that it initially kind of got them on the map. People became aware of them because of these saucy ads that they threw out. But it's something that's completely changed and is different. So even brands that have been provocative in the past are kind of changing their tone depending on demographic. It's who are the people that are going to be buying from you? What are their fears, likes, sensibilities? Follow that.
Sure. So, I don't know. I think they nailed it. I have yet to receive my nudes from you.
Yeah, listen, you can't rush art, okay? The Sistine Chapel wasn't painted in a day.
Oh, for sure. I texted my fiance. I'm like, I'm sending you some nudes. She's like, what?
Not nudes.
Right. I screenshotted the thing to make sure she knew what I meant, but it was so funny.
She was disappointed.
I'm sure.
Another company that is trying to make a brand move right now that we need to talk about whether or not it's positive.
A brand move.
They're making a move. And whether or not it's anything monumental is worth discussing.
Sure. So Microsoft, the company that has built countless products, but they're also the owners of the Bing search engine, have decided to rebrand Bing into Microsoft Bing.
Yep.
And the reason being is because I wasn't going
to say anything.
God. But the reason for doing this is because the word Microsoft is in front of so many of their other products. When you think of like Word and Excel and PowerPoint, it's almost always Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Surface. So I think it was a move towards brand consistency, but I also kind of wonder if they're hoping that more people would come over and use their search engine because it's branded as a Microsoft product. Maybe they're hoping people might not have realized that they owned it. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, this goes back to something you and me hit almost every single week. You don't own your brand.
You don't.
People's interactions, consumers own your brand. I don't care if you call it Microsoft Bing. I am not going to start calling it Microsoft Bing.
Sure.
It's Bing. If I want to call it that, if I ever interact with it, that's the reality. I'm going to just Google something anyways. But if I'm going to call it, I'm going to call it Bing. I'm not going to say Google and Microsoft Bing.
Right.
I'm really not going to say Microsoft Word. I'm just going to say Word. I'm just going to say Excel. I'm just going to say PowerPoint.
Right.
I'm not going to add Microsoft. I'm not going to. You already are well known enough that people don't need to do that. So I think that when I first saw Microsoft adding Microsoft Bing and even putting out a blog post about it, even just letting people know, I think this is the kind of move that you can just do in silence. No one really needs to know about it. If you hadn't raised attention, look at what we're doing, guys. If they hadn't done that, I don't know that anybody would have cared. I don't think it's anything newsworthy, to be honest. Microsoft, who owns Bing, just renamed Bing Microsoft Bing. It's nothing insane or crazy. They've done it with other products and services. I think they're honestly trying to keep up with Apple. Apple's launching tons of stuff. Apple TV as a service. You have Apple Music. There's a bunch of things that Apple is putting in front and have been doing for a while to lend that credibility. But when they launched Apple TV, it was Apple TV. It wasn't just TV, and now they're slapping Apple onto the front of it. Right. Brand integrity doesn't trickle down that way. It's like when they changed Internet Explorer to Edge. Even consumers' interaction with it, it didn't change people's perception of it. No. This is just a reskin of Internet Explorer. It's always going to be Internet Explorer. I don't care. Microsoft came up with this browser that everybody has hated. Forever. And just because you put a new skin on it does not change the fact that this is still your
crappy.
Yeah, you just put a new skin on it. That doesn't change anything. It's always a crappy browser. And I think the same thing is happening with Bing. Bing is a search engine. It's a non-competitor compared to Google. The percentage difference is extraordinary of who uses Google and who uses Bing. So just by putting Microsoft in front of it, it seems like a really bored attempt at a brand company who's working inside of Microsoft to say, hey, we're doing something. I don't know how you overcome Google outside of Google imploding to get more of a market share. Adding the word Microsoft in front of it isn't going to change that.
Yeah, Google is just way too established. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I don't even think that the Google search engine is necessarily a better product.
No, I don't either.
Than Bing. That's a really important distinction to make. I think that Bing actually pulls up really great results and sometimes more relevant results for what I'm looking for than Google does.
Sure.
The problem is Google is a verb. Mm-hmm. Google is super ingrained into our society, and everyone's website is optimized to make Google happy. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to get any more market share. I think they're just going to keep loading up their devices that will automatically search using Bing until someone changes it. And I don't think this is going to make a real impact. I could be wrong, but
how you overcome dominance inside of that type of industry, I just don't know how you do it. Because if I say, hey, name some search engines, 9 out of 10 times someone's first word is going to be Google.
Hey, Google.
If I say name some tissue brands, 9 out of 10 times they're probably going to say Kleenex.
Right.
Maybe Cottonelle. Maybe. Sure. But to me, it's how do you overcome that when, like you said, it's a verb? I'm going to Google it. Right. I've heard people say I'm going to Google it, and they do pull up Bing, or they're using DuckDuckGo or something else, right? It is an act that I'm going to hop onto a search engine and search for something is called Googling. Sure. So how do you overcome that? I just don't.
Well, especially when your competitor also owns the second largest search engine on the planet, YouTube.
Exactly.
And so, I don't know.
I don't think you do. I don't think you overcome it. And we even debated whether or not to even talk about this subject because it's just such a non.
You brought it up, and I really just kind of felt like who cares. But I appreciate the move and in terms of being consistent with your brand, just for a brand consistency move, we made it Microsoft being great. But I don't know, dude.
I don't normally see companies. I will say this. It's newsworthy because Microsoft thinks it's newsworthy, not because the substance is newsworthy. They're trying to say, look, we're doing things. Pay attention to us, right? And no one is. And I think it's interesting to me to see a company as big as Microsoft adding words onto a one-word brand already, which from a branding design perspective, you really want people to just talk about you in a small capacity.
Sure.
Like the more memorable, the more punchy, the more single word, the quicker I can spell it, share it, search it. It's so much better for a brand than having all these descriptors, right? And I think that even for us and our company, when we started out, it was Monsoon Design. And I think that we've shortened to Monsoon, and now we just want people to talk about us on Monsoon. It would be like us tacking on a giant word in front of Monsoon after people already know us as Monsoon. You're going backwards to me. People already know Bing. It's Bing. I get it. It's Bing, and they call it Bing, and it's been Bing. So to add Microsoft on the front, like to extend that to make it longer and more bulky, and it is consistent with what they've done in the past. I'll give them that, but I don't like why. What is the strategic reason that they're doing what they're doing? And I don't think anything that I can think of, it's not going to accomplish what they're trying.
It's just a consequence of being far too late to the party. So,
Bing it, dude.
For sure. Well, I think that's all we have for today. I'll go and land the plane.
Do it.
Good deal. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for listening and supporting us so far. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Stay tuned for weekly episodes, dropped fresh every Friday. Also, don't forget to like us on Facebook. We're trying to do a lot more community building. We're going to take your questions and discuss them later on the show. It's definitely my favorite part about what we do is taking real, actual questions we're getting from Facebook and getting them out into the world. We're also going to be doing this with LinkedIn as well super soon. We're also excited to keep making some awesome content for you. So stay tuned for Disruption and Kindness, episode 008 next Friday. Thanks for everything. We love you guys.